कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं तमाहुः पण्डितं बुधाः त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः निराशीर्यतचित्तात्मा त्यक्तसर्वपरिग्रहः शारीरं केवलं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम् यदृच्छालाभसन्तुष्टः द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः समसिद्धावसिद्धौ च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रविलीयते ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविः ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्मकर्मसमाधिनः। ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्तन्निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। The verses 18 to 24 are some of the most important verses, not just in the chapter, in this fourth chapter, but in the entire Bhagavad Gita. These verses provide a gist of where this knowledge of the self that reveals one to be whole, to be free of sorrow, pain, fear, anxiety, etc. Where will this jnana phalam or this result of this knowledge take the person? Who is the person? The struggling jiva. The struggling jiva filled with so many insecurities, strife, and striving at the same time to overcome fear, anger, etc. Where can this knowledge take the person? And how is, in the ideal situation, how is the person dealing with their life. This is always very intriguing, is it not? Because in the class, when we hear the Mahavakya explained, when we hear that the Jiva is nothing but Ishvara, when we hear that actually the truth of me is free of pain, free of sorrow, free of anger, it feels wonderful. It's very uplifting. It's very liberating, literally. And then what happens after the class? That everybody, we all know what happens after the class. It's so quote unquote business as usual. It is very difficult. It appears to be very difficult to live in these two realities, the first being Paramarthika, the absolute reality where all that is there is myself, and that myself happens to be Brahman alone. And then the second reality is Vyavaharika. What is Vyavaharika? The everyday transactional reality, give, take. And this is where the rub comes. If I knew I was Brahman and all I had to deal with was just myself, perhaps I would be okay. And I say perhaps because there is a little bit of a caveat which we can look at later. But then the problem is that this is a variegated Jagat. The Jagat is spread out, variegated, and there is so many things in the Jagat, all kinds of things. And as though that was not enough, there are so many people in the Jagat, and with each one I have to learn how to deal with. It is fraught with a lot of difficulty, lot of adjustments, and lot of heartaches, disappointments, all these things. So these two realities to balance, that becomes the hallmark of Atmajnana. That is why the most intriguing aspect of Atmajnanam is how does the Jnani live in the world. This was Arjuna's question we saw towards the end of chapter 2, and the Jnani Lakshana was pointed out, but still it doesn't seem Lord Krishna can see that Arjuna needs more instruction here. And thanks to Arjuna, we all get the benefit of this, the nectar of these verses. In verse number 18, we saw one more Lakshana of an Atmajnani which had not been discussed in chapter 2 or chapter 3. And what was that? The very definition, shaking up the very definition, revolutionizing, in fact, the very definition of what is karma and what is not karma. And we find out that, to our shock, that there is not much difference between the two. So, in karma, there is actually akarma. We saw that already, but just to bring us back to the same place. In karma, there is akarma. There is no karma in karma. Why? Because the Jnani does not look upon himself as karta. The Jnani doesn't say, I am doing anything. And then what does the Ajnani do? The Ajnani, by contrast, Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, attributes the doership to where it does not belong. Doership does not belong to Atma. Where does doership belong? Anatma, not Atma. Doership belongs to the Ahankara, the one who stands up and owns up the action. I am the doer. I did it. Yippee. This is the person. And wants acknowledgement. And then wonders why people are not clapping. I have done it. This is me. And then the person is immediately dejected because things do not go according to our plan all the time, and as a result what happens? Disappointment ensues, victory. Any kind of victory or a sense of accomplishment soon is followed by a sense of dejection and disappointment because of the inability to control one's surroundings and one's actions. So what about this ahankara? This ahankara is usually aligned with the body, the mind, the senses, and the sense of doership. And so what is the difference between the one who has this kind of an alignment of the I notion and the jnani? For the jnani, the ahankara is aligned completely 100% with Paramarthika Satchidanando Aham Asmi. That Aham, the I notion, goes and sits with Satchidananda Atma iti jnanam, this kind of a knowledge. It is at home with this knowledge. In other words, it is at home with Om. Its home is in Om. Its home is home. But for the rest of the people who have not had exposure to the knowledge, the ahankara is aligned with the body, the mind, the senses, the sense of doership, the sense of what is that? The other one, bhoktritvam, done in ship. I am a doer. Part A, part B, I am done in by other people's omissions and commissions. So the first one leads to guilt. I cannot handle my own omissions, my own commissions. The second one, being affected by other people's omissions and commissions, leads to hurt, a sense of hurt. This is the problem. And so, therefore, this for the jnani, the aham, the I notion is walked over by the guru, by the shastra, to establish itself and to belong in the realm of Satchidananda alone. That is why the person sees akarma in karma. So what is karma? That which is happening. Yes, I am the doer is me, I can say. I don't have to have some kind of a funny language when people ask, did you eat? This being has not eaten. I don't have to have this kind of a artificial language. When are you leaving? This being is leaving day after tomorrow. You don't have to say this. So you can say, I am leaving, I am coming, but the I is, there is an understanding that the I is the transactional sense of the I that is there. The ahankara is able to have an as though existence in the vyavaharika life, in the life of transactions, while not losing its place in the paramarthika. So that is how it happens. Like for example, we just, one forgets what is one's place, one forgets, and so here that forgetting is not there thanks to being exposed to Atmajnanam. So karmani akarma yaha paschet, and then the opposite is also true, akarmani karma. In non-action also the wise one sees action. How can the wise one see action in non-action? Because so many times we say, I am keeping silent. I am observing silence. I am keeping silence. The verb to keep, to observe. I am doing a fast. To do are all actions, correct? But then, what is the action? Inaction. Non-action is the action. I am doing a fast means what? Not eating. Not eating is what? Non-action. But strangely, there is not much difference between not eating, not sleeping, and not talking, and talking, sleeping, and acting. How are the two strangely similar? Because they both, in order to be called an action, both of them have to come from free will. They both come from free will. Freely I decide to keep a fast. Freely I decide to keep a vak tapas, maunam, silence. And freely I decide to not do this, not do that. And then both of them have karaka involvement. Karaka, as we are studying in the grammar, they are what? They are factors involved in action. And what are the factors? There should be an actor, karta. There should be an object of action, karma. There should be an instrument of action, karana. And there should be a location where the action is taking place, adhikarana. These are at least three, four important ones when we generally talk about action. And so the karaka involvement is there both in eating and non-eating. For example, eating, food is the object, Devadatta is the eater, and what else? And he eats with a spoon. Spoon is the karana. And then let's say Devadatta is eating, but Somadatta is fasting. Devadatta feasting, Somadatta fasting. And so Somadatta's fast also there is free will, and all the karakas are there. Who is the non-faster, non-actor? Somadatta. He will raise his hand. And then what else? What is the object? Again, food is the object. And through what is he fasting? You cannot say he is fasting with a spoon. What do we have to say? He is fasting with his willpower. By the power of his mind, he has decided to take up a fast. So that the mind becomes an instrument. So he trains himself to not salivate whenever he is around food. He makes sure to not be around food, to not go near the dining hall anywhere when the bell rings. He makes sure to keep away, so that it requires the strength of the mind. We have seen all this. And then strangely enough, both of them have result of action. So if you eat, also you have result of action. Immediately there is tripti, and then long term there is what? There is the strength and everything involved that is needing to do the work. And then not eating also there is karma phala. Very interesting. Non-action has result of action. What is the result of action? Punya. You get some punya for not eating. It's a punya karma. Not eating, not talking, etc. Not talking is a punya karma, because think of all the things one could have said. By talking, one has refrained. So it is also a form of punya karma. So in these ways, there is a sadharmya. Adi Shankara says in his very long and elaborate and extremely beautiful bhashya to this section, that there is a sadharmyam. Sadharmyam means there is similarity between karma and akarma. The wise one is able to penetrate the secret of both of these, and therefore does not take it at face value, and therefore does not regard himself as a doer at any time. So therefore that person is buddhiman, we saw that. And the ensuing verses elaborate on this very peculiar but very profound distinction between karma and akarma, and how that translates in day-to-day life. This we love about the Bhagavad Gita, how things translate into day-to-day life. The Upanishad will just tell something and go away to the next topic, go on to the next topic. But in the Bhagavad Gita, thanks to Arjuna's questions and thanks to it being much more personal than the Upanishads, it speaks to one because Lord Krishna takes the time to elaborate on how it looks like in the daily life. And to this extent we saw verses 19 and 20, we have seen, and then we saw that we saw in verse 19 that the key to being in this place is of course exposure to self-knowledge, described by the lovely compound Jnanagni Dagdha Karma. Jnanagni Dagdha Karman. Okay, so the one who is the karmas have been completely annihilated by the fire of knowledge. That means the person has taken the pains to study to have this vidya, whatever effort one has put. And then so that is very, very beautiful. And then we also saw one more thing that describes the pandityam, the wisdom of the person. The wisdom of the person does not lie in books alone, we saw, or in some kind of a abstract scholarship. Where does the wisdom lie? The wisdom lies in the dexterity, the ability to do whatever one does without any sankalpa or kama. Kama means an agenda. There is absolutely zero agenda on the part of the wise one, and then there is no sankalpa. Sankalpa means controlling the results through strong intentions and interventions. This also is not there. So we get the first clue of how the Jnani lives this very blurry distinction between karma and akarma in the day-to-day life. Then we saw one more set of qualifications in verse number 20. What was that? Not only are the actions of the wise ones free of kama, free of sankalpa, but they are also free of the abhilasha. What is abhilasha? Desire, expectation of what? Karma phala. So the wisdom is not just in how to approach the initiation of an action, because the wise person is also acting, the otherwise is also acting. So what is the difference between the wise and the unwise? The wise one gives up all kinds of fancies, sankalpas, agenda, and also at the same time is able to give up the addiction to karma phala. This is very, very important. And then, how can the person give up karma phala? Because the person is nitya triptaha. The person is contented. All the time the person is enjoying a contentment. It's a fantastic life. It's just always contented. If something extra happens, fantastic. If it doesn't happen, even more fabulous. So since the contentment does not depend on external forces, then that is why the person is able to not bank on the karma phala, assuring him or her of having a wonderful day. So the wonderful day is not dependent upon one's karma phala. And then wonderful day, wonderful life, wonderful year, none of them are dependent on the karma phala. And then such a person, karmani abhipravrittaha api. Abhipravrittaha means even though the person is doing karma in the life, na eva kinchit karoti saha. He is actually a non-actor. How is the person a non-actor? Because the I is firmly situated where? Om. Yes. Brahman. Om. Om is wonderful because Om is Ishvara and Om is consciousness. Both. So that's why Om is wonderful. So therefore, Om is consciousness, I. Om is Ishvara, and it's all just encapsulated in this one syllable. Om. Very nice. And so the one who knows that this is me, then established in this Om, one does all kinds of things. Karmani abhipravrittaha api. Abhipravrittaha means even though doing karma, then even though focused on doing things, na eva karoti kinchit saha. He is not really doing anything at all, because that non-doership has come as a result of the knowledge. And so here a small distinction is made in these verses, that there is a verse 20, 23 are connected to describing the grihastha jnani. That is possible, It is possible for somebody to be in Grihastha to have a family life and also gain this knowledge. Because the gain of the knowledge, fortunately, does not depend on the gender, does not depend on the varna, whatever one does, one's occupation, does not depend on the ashrama, whether one is a vanaprasthi, forest dweller, whether one is a sannyasi, someone who has formally given up the karma in order to pursue a life of Atmajnanam, or whether one is a busy householder who has studied. What should be common here? Whether man or woman or any status in life, or a sannyasi or householder, all of them should enjoy Atmajnanam in common. As long as Atmajnanam is there, then they don't have to worry about anything. So it applies to even though they are doing the work, they are doing whatever they want to do, but still they are free. So verses 23 are connected to description of a Grihastha Jnani according to Adi Shankara. Why? Because if we look in the last line of verse 20, we hear one expression, Karmani Abhipravrittaha Api. That abhi coming there, abhipravrittihi for karma, meaning abhimukha, the person is always engaged in action. So even though now we find sannyasis also engaged in action of teaching and study, etc., those being connected to Atmajnanam are not actually counted as actions. And in Adi Shankara's time and in the time of the Bhagavad Gita, there was much more of a strict distinction between what kind of things the sannyasi took up and what kind of things the grihastha did. And so therefore this 120th verse is addressing a grihastha jnani, because karmani abhipravrittaha, always engaged in action. This is not how a sannyasi is described in Adi Shankara's time. And so always engaged in action means searching out schools for the children to go to, and then what else? Making sure their lunch is packed and greeting them when they come home, making sure they are doing their homework, and then what else? And house means you have to buy things because everybody has to eat, and you have to go shopping, you have to get things, and then you can't just go shopping, you have to find out where the cheapest things are there, you have to go to those particular shops, get the cheapest things. And then what? Children means they will be fighting with one another, and then soon they become teenagers, they will be fighting with the parents, and then of course the parents may also be fighting with one another, and so therefore all these things have to be resolved. And so these karmani abhipravrittaha means fighting means arguments. Should we do this? No, we shouldn't do this. See, if you just have to make a decision for yourself, that itself is difficult. Should I eat? Should I not eat? Oh, I don't know. What should I do? It's a nice idea to keep a fast, but maybe I should, no, maybe not so fast. Like this, some thoughts will come. Imagine fraught as the decision making is, even if one person has to decide for himself or herself, imagine if you have to decide together, a family of 4, nuclear family. Then the decision is neither new nor clear, because it involves so many ahankaras, so many egos. Children want one thing, in-laws want another thing in a joint family, and then the spouse wants still one more thing. And then you have to compromise, you have to sacrifice, you have to do all kinds of things. And then of course the children grow up, and then in the Indian society there is a responsibility for marriage, etc., all these things. So this karmani abhipravrittaha api. So even though the grihastha is karma abhimukha, she is facing the karma all the time, has to do things all the time, still is not affected by the action, still is not affected by the results of action, because the heart is firmly in Brahman. As Brahman, one lives freely. So that's why in the culture this is already set up. This kind of a knowledge that one can gain as a grihastha is already set up by what? Karma yoga. And the two most important aspects of karma yoga, which we have seen in detail, the two most highlighted aspects, Ishvara, bringing Ishvara into one's life, into one's action as an actor, and then prasada buddhi, receiving everything as prasada. So the work itself is the invocation of Ishvara, worship of Ishvara, and prasada is coming from Ishvara because I do not control the results of action. And so therefore what? So therefore this prasada buddhi, now it has matured into Atma Jnanam, not by its own. After exposure, after following Karma Yoga, gaining the preparation for a committed exposure to Atma Jnanam, and then in that all the karmas are burnt, so to speak. And then what else? The person, even though doing the job of being a householder, paying the bills, buying the milk, converting it into yogurt, so many things one does, and still the karma does not touch one at all. Purposely the grihastha jnani is used because, as we saw in chapter 3, this knowledge is best lived in one's life. This knowledge is for living. And living where? In the Jagat. Even if one goes to the Himalayas, you still have to deal with a few people. Yeah, we still have to deal with people. And even if nobody is there, one has to deal with oneself, which can be quite an army of people sometimes. And so therefore the teaching here is just very beautiful, that even though I am leading a quote unquote regular life of paying the bills, etc., the knowledge is the source of my security. The understanding I am Satchidananda is a source of security. And what about me as a householder? Prasada buddhi. What comes, let it come. Whatever goes, let it go. And so one doesn't try to control the life of the children. Children are prasada. In fact, the word prasada is there in naming of children. Every other person used to be called prasad. Durga Prasad, Ram Prasad, Krishna Prasad, Devi Prasad, like this. It is all prasada. So it is Durga's problem. Why am I worried? The person here in verse 20 can tell herself or himself. And I already told you, we have a very nefarious politician who half the time the person is in jail, unfortunately. And then what is his name? Lalu Prasad. Still a Prasad, yes. So perhaps some people are incarnated to exhaust other people's karmas. That is also there. So Lalu Prasad, so Krishna Prasad, Rama Prasad. When children themselves are prasada, what to talk of all the other karma phala? So therefore, even though the person is engaged in action when all the time, unlike a sannyasi, the person has to cook, clean, go to office, come back, do all the things to reproduce the life. Their security is elsewhere. They do not rely on their actions, on their result of action for the gain of the security. Neither do they rely on the relationships for security. Usually this is what it is. People get married for security. But actually it doesn't work. Why? Insecure plus insecure. That is what happens, generally speaking. Doubly insecure. But if the knowledge is there, insecure plus insecure, both of them want to become secure as a result of the knowledge. They can both study, or even if one studies, the other one is still affected positively. Very beautiful. And so here the person's security is elsewhere, means firmly centered on the fruits of Atma Jnanam and my own wholeness. If I am whole, and if somebody does something I do not like or somebody disappoints me, it's okay. It is disappointing, yes, but it is okay. Why? Because I immediately understand that this is how the world is. I do not expect the finite Jagat to cough up the infinite. It cannot, because the infinite is not a product, and the infinite is not based on my own karma or other people's karma towards me. So therefore, the infinite being myself alone, I don't look this side or that side for my security and happiness. So the artha kama pursuits I may be pursuing, but more as an actor in a play. So the actor in a play does not think it cannot take it too seriously. It's like we have, what is that? In Navaratri time we have Rama Leela, the story of Rama enacted for 10 days. And then every day, one chapter, one portion of the Ramayana. And who is Rama? The village blacksmith. Village blacksmith was lucky enough to get the role of Rama because he had a sattvic face and he looked energetic and he looked very charismatic. So the Panchayat, the village council, cast him in the role of Rama. Then of course after every episode, all the people throw flowers and then come and touch the feet of who? Not blacksmith, Rama. They touch the feet of Rama. And this continues for 10 days. And then what? On the 11th day, they just come to his shop and say, what happened to my pots and pans? Have you finished welding them? The women of the village ask. Somebody else says, what happened to my horseshoe? The horse is limping. You need to fix this. How can you be so lazy? You see, this is all connected to not Rama, but the blacksmith. So, if the blacksmith turned Rama is to take all the accolades seriously, oh, the whole village is touching my feet, and then on the 11th day, when he goes back to work, he will be very, very depressed. So therefore, here it is all like that. Sometimes we have lots of chocolates, and sometimes there are thorns, and that equanimity is what is very much important. Having described the Grahastha Jnani, now we look at the Lord Krishna's description of the Sannyasi Jnani in the next verse. Nirashiryata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvannapnoti kilvisham. Nirashihi asha na vidyate yasya. That one. So, Nirashin, the one who has no asha, no desire, nothing to control this way, that way, or any which way. No sense of wanting to change the outcome of anything. This is called Nirashi. Then the next verse, the next compound is very beautiful. Yata chittatma. Yata is the past passive participle of yam, to discipline. Yata, disciplined. Chittatma, he is not here. Satchidananda Atma. Chittatma, body, mind, sense complex. The one who is disciplined with regards to the needs of the body, mind, sense complex. Suddenly, some people suddenly they get hungry. They cannot wait even for a second to eat. They have to eat. It could also be a physical thing, we don't know. But then they have to have the food. And then, if they don't, first they are hungry, and then if they don't eat, they become hangry, which is hunger and anger mixed together. It's a kind of a added on word. It's not a real word, but people use it all the time. So the thing is, if it's of course a physical issue, then one has to attend to it. But if it is not, Then if it is an emotional issue, I exercise some restraint. I tell myself, yes, what can I do now? How can I distract myself? Because the food will come only in an hour. So what can I do for this hour? So this is Yata Chittatma, the one who is disciplined with regard to the needs of the body, the needs of the mind. The mind also suddenly wants to go after something, suddenly gets restless. Restless means something comes from within that has to be addressed. Some trigger comes, it gets restless, or it wants to go after something external, it gets restless. So that restlessness, whether the trigger is from inside or outside, is attended to again appropriately at the appropriate time and at the appropriate circumstances. This is titiksha really. Titiksha is forbearance. We saw that in Tattvabodha. Titiksha is forbearance, the ability cultivating a higher threshold of acceptance and tolerance for the sake of this knowledge. Not to be a doormat, but for the sake of this knowledge, I am willing to put up with some discomfort. It is okay. And then what happens? You find that you are able to put up with more and more discomfort. You are comfortable in the midst of discomfort. That is Yata Chittatma. That is the sannyasi. Yata Chittatma is the one who is comfortable. Even in the midst of discomfort, the one who is comfortable, because the source of comfort is the truth of one's own self, and so the body-mind-sense complex is not involved. In the olden days, the sannyasi could not be a vikalanga. Vikalanga means any kind of a disability, differently abled, etc. One could not be. Why? Because of this reason. Because Yata Chittatma, because they would not be able to. In those days it was very, very harsh. They had to go live somewhere far away. Face the extremities of the weather, climate, etc. Be on the move all the time and eat whatever is given. So for those who could not do such hardships, they had a different kind of sannyasa that was given, that is called Kuti Chaka sannyasa. Kuti Chaka, you have a little house in your own backyard. You make a little kutiya. That's why the word kuti comes. You make a kuti in the backyard and you give the house to the children, and then they take care of you. I mean, if supposing one is not able to walk well or one is elderly, whatever it is. So they also can renounce, but it is more of a contained renouncement, Kutichaka sannyasa, or one becomes a Bahudaka. Bahudaka is another type of sannyasi. Lives near watering holes, pilgrim places. Udaka means pilgrimage places. There also one is assured of bhiksha. All the tourists come, pilgrims come, and definitely they will give some money, they will give some food, and temples will be there, and one can live like that. But here the sannyasi that's talked about is the either a vividisha sannyasi, the one who wants to have, wants to be in this knowledge, wants to know fully and assimilate this knowledge, or a vidvat sannyasi. Vidvat sannyasi, the one who already knows. One who already knows. And the one who wants to not be encumbered by the roles in life. So there are 4 types we have seen of sannyasa. There are still more, but 4 is suffice. 4 is sufficient for now. So this is Yata Chittatma, the one who has trained the body and the mind to face extremities, both emotional, physical, etc. Tyakta sarva parigraha. Parigraha, possessions. Tyakta sarva parigraha, by whom all the possessions have been totally and fully given up. No possessions. Oh, no possessions? Yes, few possessions. Alparthe nanj. So, few possessions. The one of few possessions. No possessions. Sometimes, we say the word no has many meanings. 6 meanings are there. But then sometimes you say, what is this? Today there is no salt in the food. Is there really no salt in the food? No, there is salt in the food, but it is less. But for that also, even in English we say no salt. Alavanam bhojanam. The food has no salt. But actually it means less salt. So here also possessions means shariram kevalam. What kind of possessions is going to be talked about in the next line? Whatever is needed to maintain the body. Whatever is needed to maintain the body, to keep the body mind fit, those possessions are there, not more than that. The sannyasi will not have a luxury villa somewhere. The sannyasi will, this kind of a sannyasi described here, will not, will not have stocks and bonds. Stocks, and that's why it's called bonds, because it leads to bondage. That is why no stocks, no bonds, and no these kinds of possessions. Optional possessions are not there. Whatever is needed to do the work, whatever is needed to teach, whatever is needed to write, whatever is needed to clothe the body, any medicines that are needed to keep the person comfortable, and whatever is needed for like the basic comfort of the body mind sense complex is there. So tyakta sarva parigraha, other than that everything else is given up. Pujya Swamiji used to always say, look around your room carefully, and then look at all the items in the room and see, is there anything that I cannot give up? And give that up first, give it away first. And so don't have anything. He used to say two things. The first thing is this: don't have anything that you cannot give away with you. And then what is the thinking and the reasoning behind this? For that he used to say, there is a difference between ownership and possession. Ownership, you can own many things. Your name could be there in the house deed, your name could be there in the registration of a car, your name could be there in many things, or even where the licensing is not required, your name could be there, like I own this. The ownership, he says, is different from possession. Possession gets one into trouble because possession means the emotions are involved, the mind is involved. Emotions and the mind, when they get involved with regard to something that one owns, then that ownership is converted to possession. And that possession, first you say, I am the possessor of X, whatever that thing is. And then what? Then very soon that starts to possess me. And we know this this is illustrated in the Puranic story of a sage called Bharata, Jada Bharata, and who was, he had many births and all of them are elaborately described, but those are not pertinent for us. Some other time we can discuss them. But in one particular iteration, he was called Jada Bharata because he was just not even doing Shariram Kevalam Karma, not even moving enough to even keep the keep the body alive, and somehow his needs would be taken care of by everybody else, including the animals, etc. So one day he saw a pregnant deer trying to cross the water, a river where he lived and near the ashram. And then what happened is that some kind of royalty or some kshatriya hunted the deer and then shot the deer with the arrow. And then the deer jumped because she was in shock, gave birth to the baby right then and there, and either was killed or ran away, something like that. And then the baby, helpless baby, and so he was very moved. He brought it, nursed it totally. So first he was the owner of the deer, and then slowly the deer became extremely dear to him. So dear, such a dear this is. And then he found that as it grew up, his affection also grew, and then he could not live without it. He could not live without it at all. And then time came, I mean, the deer is not a pet like a dog or a cat. Deer cannot be kept in the house, it grows, it has needs, it wanders. And so it would, when it grew, it started to go out here and there, get grass, make friends, all this. And generally he should have been happy, like, oh, okay, fine, I have done my duty. But no, he would not eat till the deer came back, and he could not sleep when the deer was absent at nights also. This way he got so tormented that in the next life he had, even despite the fact that he had this knowledge, etc., in the next life he had a short life of a deer. He was reborn as a deer, they say. But anyhow, so this is the conversion of from ownership to possession. First you think you can, you are in control. I am the one that is possessing. But then that which you possess begins to possess you. Then we know we are in trouble, when what we possess starts to possess us. So these two things from, directly from Pujya Swamiji, I found it very, very, very useful. And very useful tips for daily living. Very, very nice. And so here, Gata Sarva Parigraha, that's why. Then, Shariram Kevalam Karma. Yes, karma is done, You need to take a walk, you need to do yoga, you need to exercise, you do all that to keep the body fit, to keep the mind fit. Whatever is needed is done. How to keep the mind fit? Study Sanskritam. Seriously, Sanskritam keeps the mind fit, really. Better than Sudoku, better than crossword puzzles. Sanskritam really is wonderful. Keeps the mind extremely alert. And so keeping the body, mind and emotions fit, whatever one needs, resting the body when it needs, all these things. So need-based karma, shariram kevalam karma, kurvan, even though one is engaged in this much karma, na apnoti. And it's very difficult to see the na there. So, but we have to see the na. Don't read it as kurvan apnoti kilbisham. No. There is a na hidden there. Na apnoti, does not attract. Kilbisha is usually defined as papa. But here it's not so much papa. It is too much engagement in the samsara. Kilbisha is engagement in the samsara and all the strife and the conflict and everything that ensues. The person is freed of that. Even though the person is engaged in karma, even though the person is there doing things, still karma phala is not gained, and it's like a dead person's bank account. The karta being falsified. The karta has died in the wake of knowledge, and so all the sanchita, agami, etc. are not there. Even prarabdha is not there for the jnani from her own standpoint. But from the onlooker standpoint, they say, oh, just like we did for Pujya Swamiji. Oh, his heart is not doing well. Oh, he is tired. Oh, now Swamiji is in a wheelchair. Now Swamiji is in bed. Like this we used to say. But for him, he did feel that it was his body. But to explain why the body continues after Jnanam, this prarabdha, which is slowly being exhausted, is given for the sake of the onlookers, the people who surround the jnani. Okay, so then, naiva kinchit karoti saha. Then the next one. Nirashiryata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha. Oh, this one we finished, yeah. Next one is very beautiful. Yadrichhalabhasantushtaha dvandvatito vimatsaraha samasiddhavasiddhau cha kritvalpina nibadhyate. Beautiful. This can apply to this verse technically for a sannyasi, but can also apply to grihastha as a lakshana, as a sadhana. as a Jnani Lakshana, which is a sadhana. But strictly speaking, Adi Shankara in the Bhashya takes it to be the Jnani Lakshana for a sannyasi. A sannyasi who is a Jnani is described in verses 21 and 22, and so continuing the sannyasi, which of course the Grihastha can also be included, not a problem. It's general enough to include the Grihastha. This is a very nice expression, Yadricha. Yadricha is going to come again in the Bhagavad Gita, elsewhere we will see. Yadricha. Yadricha means by chance, according to one's karma. Yadricha labha. Labha, gain. Whatever is gained by chance. Like the samosas which by chance appear to keep making an appearance in the classroom. And one of the initial times when they came 10-15 minutes early. There was a big box waiting here. 10 minutes early they came, and then I had to request future samosas to be delivered at the end of the class so that it would not be distracting. And so this is the thing. Suddenly samosas come, laddus come, and then what? Next day also, one comes to class, let us say, thinking, oh, samosa will come at the end. And then what happens? No samosa. Extra Sanskrit class, only samasa. Samasa is compound. So, no samosa. This is called yadricha. You go to the dining hall, it's very refreshing. You don't know what is going to be there. What is going to be there, we don't know. Something strange which you cannot even recognize, which has some things growing out of it. Yesterday we had jackfruit sabji, and then someday something else. One day we like, one day we say this is not that, this is not my favorite, and this is what is called yadricha labha. It may not be one's favorite, but one eats it anyway. Yadricha labha. So the person's cheerfulness is not contingent upon what is served for a meal. The person's cheerfulness is not contingent upon the behavior of other people around them. The person's cheerfulness is not contingent upon things that one has or one doesn't have. The person's cheerfulness is finally not contingent upon the concepts of success and failure. Usually, the worldly concept of success and failure is very different in the world. What is success? Who is a successful person? If we ask, the answer is very clear. The one who has been able to fulfill the maximum of their ragas and dveshas is considered successful. Everybody puts him or her on a pedestal. How did you manage in this difficult jagat to become somebody who can, who has all the ragas and dveshas playing in their hands? How did you do this? Oh, you are great. But the Bhagavad Gita's concept of success and a successful person, of course, is drastically different from the worldly definition. A successful person is the one who is able to handle failure. That is the Gita's definition of a successful person. Not the one who is able to fulfill all the ragas and dveshas. That how many people can do? Less than 1% of the population can do that. Everybody cannot. Everybody cannot fulfill raga and dvesha because there are many things standing in the way, predominantly one's own karma and that of others. Therefore, the person cannot be successful. Everybody cannot. It's less than 1 percentile of the population who because of their karma, they reach the ladder of success. But for the rest of the people, what? Cheerfulness, yadricha labha. This cheerfulness is there, and study of the Bhagavad Gita gives this, imparts this cheerfulness. That my cheerfulness is not contingent upon external conditions or the internal condition of my own mind. What is it dependent upon? It is dependent upon myself. This is what it is. It is dependent upon myself and this knowledge as Satchidananda Atma. It is not dependent on anything else. So a successful person, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is the one who knows how to handle failure. Is the one who is able to not be dismantled and fall apart because of any blocks in the fulfillment of ragadveshas. And the successful person is the one who is fine regardless of how many ragas and dveshas remain unfulfilled. This is the definition of a successful person. There is a little mental adjustment we have to make in the light of this verse and in the light of this definition. More we'll see later. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.